Hello friends, welcome back. How are we doing? The album that we've waited for, the end of the story, is finally out. Breach is here with us. Is the Breach in the room with us? A year ago, Tyler did a live stream where he asked if Paladin Straight sounded like the end of the story, and no, it did not. But this album kinda does, and we're just gonna talk about it. I have so many feelings about this album, about the songs, about the music videos, so we're just gonna, it's gonna be a very casual chat about all of this, because this is it, you know? This is the end of an era. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about, or if you're not caught up on the story at all, I'm gonna link my playlist in the description where I went over the entire story so that you can be caught up. But we're at the end now. 10 years and it led up to this. We're starting this video at around 2 weeks before Breach comes out, I think just like the start of September, because that's around the time that Drum Show came out, which it's just, I already know this is gonna be a long video. I cannot believe it's only gonna be covering 3 weeks worth of stuff. I don't even want to know how long we're going to be sitting here. I'm probably going to record this in multiple parts just because I have a lot to say. So get a drink, get a snack, sit down, let's lock in, right? Welcome to class. So, September 2025, the month that Breach is getting released. At the start of the month, people started to talk about how certain segments of the songs were getting leaked, which is not surprising because pretty much all of their albums have had leaks in some way. I personally am not a fan of listening to songs that are leaked before they're meant to come out because it kind of takes away from the streaming from the actual artist when they intended it to come out. And also, especially with something like this where the ending is such a big thing and you kind of want to experience it all together, I personally can't understand wanting to get that like first glimpse at it. I would much rather everybody experience it together, you know? I think the big thing to take away from that is just if you feel comfortable listening to leaks, don't make everybody else also listen to them, you know? Like, be respectful of the fact that some people aren't wanting to do that, so either don't post it or put a massive warning before you post anything relating to the stuff. On September 2nd, the band posts a more behind the scenes for Drum Show, how they made it, Tyler talking about how Josh did so good. And also 21 Pilots and My Chemical Romance were both up for Best Artist at the VMAs, which is such a cool thing to see because My Chemical Romance hasn't even put out an album in how many years? So the fact that they were even included on that list is like, it's so cool to see. That's unrelated, it's just a cool thing to see. On September 3rd, the band posts to say there are 9 days until Breach, and obviously the number 9 is significant for the 9 bishops and everything like that, but it's just more promotion for the album. It's not like going all the way back to the cryptic videos that they had been doing for the contract or anything. But while we're looking at this image, people did start to kind of make note of the fact that in a lot of the promotional pictures recently, Josh has had his like neck covering over his mouth like this, and it does kind of look like the bishop paint. So this whole time we've been thinking, oh, Clancy might become a bishop, like he's gonna take the power of the city and he's gonna become this new thing or whatever. But now there's more conversation about what if the torchbearer becomes a bishop or has a relationship with the bishops that we hadn't considered before. And I do think we talked about that a little bit in the last video where we were talking about the letters and how it could have been the torchbearer driving the car in Heavy Dirty Soul and how he may be tied to the bishops. So what if he knew them before all of this, or what if he's going to join them later, something like that. And all of this imagery is very much adding to that idea. Around this time, the length of the songs showed up on streaming services, so we got an idea of what we're gonna be dealing with. So for example, we got to learn that both City Walls and Downstairs would be over 5 minutes, and that the final song on the album, the one that Tyler said is him trying to understand the final song in this story, is barely 2 minutes. And after seeing that, there were a lot of people worried that we're gonna get something that is very similar to Truce, which is also around 2 minutes. It's a short song, but it hits hard, and that song was most recently referenced in the Dema letters that were sent out with the physical mail, where that was the hidden message in the page. The sun will rise and we will try again was like the hidden code on the mail that they had sent out. So Truce is obviously relevant here somehow. That idea just goes along with the rebellion really well, the idea that they're gonna have to keep trying every day, but also, is it gonna mean something here? And the listening parties started to happen around this time, around early September, where you could go to like an indie record store in your area and they would play the entire album. It's ultimately just a nice community experience where you can come together and see the ending of this story with a bunch of people that also care about it. Again, it made it a lot harder to go on social media at the time because I didn't want to come across spoilers and people were going to these listening parties and immediately posting all their thoughts about all the songs. It's okay to be excited, but could you just hold on a second because not all of us are there. On September 4th, there's not really any lore things that go on. 21 Pilots announced that they're gonna be headlining a couple of festivals next year, and Tyler posts a video of him being good at basketball as a kid. And then people start making jokes that he's gonna take down Nico with the power of a three-pointer. It's silly. Like, we're this close to their big album, and they're just not talking about it much at all. But it's funny that they just don't even need to post about it that much. Like, they hyped up the contract more than they did the actual album, but it doesn't even matter because the fans are here regardless. Then on September 5th, 1 week before the album comes out, Blurryface posts and deletes a video. It's around 6 seconds. It pans over Clancy's legs in the tower, like how we saw him at the end of Paladin Strait. What looks to be bishop bodies around him and potentially the antlers at his feet as well. We see a clip of him standing up in what looks to be the jumpsuit video where he's in trench, and then the very final second of this video is what seems to be people running upstairs, so potentially the Banditos coming to save Clancy in the tower. It's a bit hard to see. It's obviously not trying to give everything away. It's just giving us a little sneak peek into what we're going to be getting. But some people said they thought they saw Nico on the ground. I don't know where they saw that. There was a bishop on the ground, but we already know that the bishops had been taken down aside from Nico, so I don't know that we saw Nico fallen in that clip necessarily. But obviously the idea of Clancy standing up in trench in that music video, that's like the first introduction that we get to the bishops, where he's running away and he falls down and he keeps trying to leave. And then if the torchbearer is running up these steps to save him, like, we're getting all of these bits and pieces of where the story could be going, but it's still anyone's guess as to how this is gonna end. And I saw some people saying that they think this is the last message we're gonna get from Blurryface. Like, after this, he's not gonna post anything else. This is his final message to us, which I don't know what they saw in this video. I guess if they thought that Nico had fallen in the video. I don't think there's anything in this video that is so important to where it would suggest that this is the last communication we're gonna get. I fear it does end up being the last communication that we get, at least, you know, for now, if they ever decide to post something again, but up until Breach is released, this is the last thing that we get from that account. And of course, it's exciting, you know, we're coming up on the end of this story, we're finally getting the answers, but at the same time, it's very bittersweet to be saying goodbye to all of these things that we've kind of grown used to, expecting a cryptic post or anticipating some new puzzle to solve or whatever it is, and then to have to say goodbye to that. But then a part of you wants to believe that maybe they'll pull one last trick or something, so you never really lose hope. But the more time that passes, the less likely that seems, and then it just you feel the heartbreak all over again. On September 7th, we see just pictures of fans with Josh running a 5K. Oh, and also he announces that he's gonna have a baby. Him and Debbie do a post where they announce that they're having a kid, and it's just so exciting to see. And it does also kind of justify to a lot of people why they're cutting this tour short, why they're not doing a big world thing to end off this era, is because he's having his first kid and he's gonna want to spend time with them. And this post just happens to line up with the anniversary of when Tyler and Jenna announced that they were having a baby on stage. So it's a really happy day all around. And it was funny because I'm looking at this post and I'm seeing, obviously, Debbie Ryan and Josh Dunn, who I've followed both of them for most of my life. Like 21 Pilots I've listened to for almost half of my life, and Debbie Ryan I've watched since I was probably like 6 years old or something. Like, these are two figures that have been very prominent in my media consuming life. And initially I only processed it as, oh, Josh from 21 Pilots, and then I thought about it some more and I thought, oh wait, Debbie Ryan as in the one that I watched for my entire childhood. Like, I can't fathom the fact that it's the two of them. I don't know. It's such a weird thing to think about, but I'm so excited for them. I wish them all the best with all of that. It's just such a cool thing to see this band succeeding, to see like the story's going how they want it to. They're coming to an end at a natural point, and they're setting a boundary. They're setting, this is going to be our time to focus on our families and our personal lives, and then we're kind of getting a glimpse into what that really means, why they're making that decision, because obviously Tyler has been working and been touring for a lot of his kids' early life, so he wants to take some time to settle down with them. But now we see that Josh is also taking another step with this whole family. It's just so sweet. Then on September 9th, the 21 Pilots store gets updated with some more merch. The guys announced they'll be headlining another festival, just some regular promotional stuff. And also the band decides to sue Temu for selling bad merch of them or something. Which, honestly, good on them, you know? They have the power to do that. They have the money to actually take it seriously. And I can put a link in the description that kind of goes over what they were actually doing, like what the issue was and what they're doing about it, because I just think it's really cool to see a band that does kind of care a little bit and they have the ability to do something about it, and they're actually taking action when something is bad. Then, on September 10th, we get a video posted to their YouTube channel titled, I Am Torchbearer. Before the Clancy album got released, we got this video titled, I Am Clancy, that sort of caught us up on the story. It gave us a straightforward, here is what's been happening this entire time, because up until that point, we've kind of been guessing, we've kind of been piecing together the story based on the music videos, based on the letters, based on all these little bits and pieces that they've been giving us, but for the first time, in one video on their official channel, they posted, here is exactly what's been going on, here's where we're at right now. I am a citizen, I am an escapee, I am an exception, we know exactly who this character is. And this video, given to us only a couple days before the end of the story, shares Torchbearer's side of things. Which is exciting just for the fact that we get to see Torchbearer speaking. This is his first time speaking in the story, so it's a cool thing to see. And also to get to know a little bit about what he's thinking, because for so long we've only seen him as this guiding force for Clancy, but now we get to see more of his intention, like what he's actually working towards. Torch says that Clancy is stuck in a cycle, but that this has to be the last time, which is something that we saw in the physical letters that he had written earlier. He says that everybody was once a citizen in Dema, but they escaped the watch of the bishops. The citizens are trapped in the cycle, but the banditos that have escaped are free from that, but they're also banished from the city. They're not allowed in. They do sneak in sometimes, though, and they do it for Clancy. Because he's an exception to the rule, they need him to break the cycle. He says, I am Torchbearer, and I will not give up on him. And then we're left at that same cliffhanger of Nico coming into the room and grabbing Clancy by the throat. It is really interesting to look at these videos back to back and to see the different ways that they're approaching what's going on, because Clancy is very much, I have the power, I have to do this thing, I was doing this and this and this, I am special and I'm gonna do something cool here. Whereas Torchbearer is all about, we have done this together, we are doing it for this person, we believe in a greater good. And also the visuals are totally different. The vibe of the paper, where Clancy seems to be in the city, he's typing out his message and it seems to be like artificial blue light from the city. And then you see Torchbearer's writing where it's handwritten on kind of a crusty, dusty piece of paper, and it seems to be lit by fire. It's a lot more natural. On September 10th, the band announces that they're going to be taking over on iHeartRadio for a little bit to talk about the album, answer some questions. And it's also just really cute how, like, the video that they announced it in, because they jumped into frame in a way that was similar to something they did a long time ago, so it just reminded people of that. September 11th, a couple hours before the album is released, the band posts a little bit more of the music video, a little teaser. And then also, as we come up on the album's release, the boys are posting on their Instagram stories with just, like, cute pictures of them from earlier, from, like, when they were first working on Blurry Face, and then more recently, just like casual photos of them hanging out. And it's just really sweet. And it kind of reminds you that these are real people that are working on this thing. Like, yes, we're about to receive something that's a big deal, and it's a story we've been following for a long time, but at the end of the day, it's just some guys, you know? And then September 12th, local time, Breach is released. At 12 EST, the music video comes out. When the album is released, the band posts their standard sitting with the album on the ground picture. It is funny because they have different captions on Instagram, which is more serious, and then on Twitter, which the boys both individually put, like, silly captions over it. And there are a couple of things we need to talk about here with the release of the album, because obviously we get the City Walls music video, which is nearly 10 minutes. So we have to talk about the visuals there and how the story actually ends. And then we also have to go over the songs and the lyrics and potential meanings and everything like that. And I think what I'm gonna do here is start off with the music video and the lore and just finish up the story itself. And then we can go back through the rest of the songs, which it does work out because City Walls is the first song on the album anyways, but we can go through after the music video and then talk about the lyrics and potential tiebacks to other songs or just how I feel about them in general. And as always, I'm gonna link other creators that have talked about this album, about these songs in the description, because I think it's really cool to see different people's interpretations. So that being said, I guess we'll just jump into the end of the story. Of course, if you're a fan of the band, of the music, of the story, watch the music video first. What are you even doing here? Watch the music video, take in the end of the story, and then sit and probably cry for a little bit, and then you can come back here, we'll talk about it. I think the music video is done so well. It was a bit jarring to hear that the music video cost $1 million to make, but looking at it now, you can definitely tell a lot of effort went into it, and I think it's a really solid piece of work that ends the story. I'm gonna primarily be talking about the visuals here, but the lyrics are very much tied into what's happening in the video, so we'll probably go back and forth. So, the City Walls music video starts. We're looking out at this big landscape where there's the fight going on in front of the city, and then we zoom in on Dema. We see that same clip of the torchbearer looking up to Clancy and kind of being worried for him, and then we see what he does after that. Finally! After so long, we're finally seeing the story move forward. Torchbearer takes a group of banditos and runs into the city, and they are making their way to the tower to try and help Clancy. As they break in, they start to climb the steps. We go back to Clancy and Nico, where Clancy starts to get black paint up his face, but he fights back and it goes back down, it retreats. And then they go at it, and they are proper fighting at the top of this tower. They are beating each other up. And then when the song gets to move it up, it's a breach, Clancy gets thrown to the ground, and when he hits the floor, it transitions to Clancy staring at the Heavy Dirty Soul car. He's standing on the road, and he's watching it burn. The car and the drums are on fire in front of him, and then Nico is also there. But the thing is, the look in Nico's eyes at this point kind of makes it seem like he doesn't want this to be happening. Like, he kind of feels bad that Clancy is stuck in this cycle. And you almost start to wonder how evil Nico is versus how much he's just doing what he thinks he's supposed to be doing. Which we'll kind of come back to that idea at the end of this video, but he just doesn't look malicious, you know? He looks like he feels bad for what's happening. We go back up to the towers, we see them fighting a little more, and the next time that Clancy falls, he's thrown into the bandito camp that we see in the Levitate music video. And at the end of that video, we do see Bishop Hands come up and grab him by the throat and pull him away, but now we're seeing the actual bishop there. Clancy's going through the camp, and it looks like he's looking for somebody, probably Torchbearer, but this time he's all alone, and when he turns around, Nico is there again and grabs him and pulls him back. They fight more in the tower, and the last time that he falls down, he is thrown into the jumpsuit video where he's in the puddle of water and he stands up, which is what we saw in that teaser clip. Rather than being sunny, the whole area of Trench is lit by moonlight, which is cool. And the same as we saw in that music video, Clancy gets up and he tries to run, but he's overpowered by Nico. And then we see up in the tower as Nico pins him to a wall and uses the antlers that give them power to stab Clancy in the chest. And the thing is, those antlers come from Ned, and the whole thing is that they represent creativity or whatever, and how the bishops need those to use their power. But it's interesting to think about the fact that that kind of represents creativity, and that's what takes him down. Clancy is kind of fatally wounded, and as he's sliding down the wall, as he's falling to the ground, we see a little bit inside of his head, and you can see the doubt that he's feeling. Where up until this point, even with stuff like overcompensate, we can see the confidence that this character is meant to have, where he thinks he has the power, he has to do it, and he's the only one that can achieve these great things. And now, in this moment where he might be dying and we're seeing into his head, he looks a bit more uncertain about what's going on. He doesn't have a clue how he can hold it together, you know? And throughout all of this, the torchbearer is at the door to this room trying to break in, but he's been unsuccessful. He has not been able to enter the room. And we go between torchbearer trying to break down this door and then Clancy sideways on the ground in his weakest state ever, and he's singing I Wonder Where You Are, and it very much seems like he's in his last moments thinking of Torchbearer, wondering why his friend isn't here to save him. And meanwhile, his team is on the other side of the door, and they're doing everything they can to get into him. It's so hard to watch, because it's so close to being what it's supposed to be. And then it falls apart so quickly, you know? This whole time we've been building it up as Clancy has this power, he's able to take down the bishops, we know we can do it, and then in the battle, he's just taken down. He didn't stand a chance. Nico was all over him. I would say in terms of, like, magic, if you want to call it that, Clancy is way more powerful than any of the other bishops, but when it comes to just raw strength, Nico took him down so quick. We watch as Nico breaks the antlers and drops them to the ground, and then we get kind of the flashbacks of the other music videos where Nico is behind Clancy, but in all of those, Clancy chooses now, instead of running away, to turn around and to face the enemy head on. In the tower, he finds the strength to stand up one more time, and as the song sings, "Entertain my faith," I don't know how to explain this in a way that doesn't sound incredibly cringy, so you're just gonna have to believe me. The song sings, "Entertain my faith," he's yelling, and Clancy stands up and does the 21 Pilots symbol with his hands, and that power blasts Nico out of existence. Because like we're saying, Clancy has a power that is greater than any of the bishops. He doesn't even need the antlers to do this work. So he stands up, and with the power of friendship, he takes down the bishops. And that blast of power also opens the door, which the torchbearer has been working at, and it knocks the torchbearer back quite a ways. And it feels so lame to kind of describe that moment, because being like, oh yeah, he does the finger symbol, the band symbol, like, it just sounds kind of silly. But that symbol doesn't only represent the band, it represents the fans. Like, that's what people do at the concerts. It's emphasizing the importance of community and having a support system, and, you know, it's not just about this big boss battle where he takes it down in one big swoop of power, but it's also like, where does that power come from? You know? The banditos enter the room, and Clancy is facing out the window. He's got his back to them, and this stance kind of looks like a Skilled and Icy promotional picture that they did for the live stream. I don't know how intentional that is versus just he was standing, and when you're standing, you're gonna be facing a direction. It happened to be the same thing that they used in that picture. But the silhouette does look nearly identical to the Skilled and Icy poster. But as the banditos enter the room, instead of turning around and looking at them, Clancy goes up to one of the curtains on the wall, and he pulls it down and he puts it over himself as Bishop robes. And as he turns to face his team, his people, we can see that he now has Bishop paint on his face. At the start of the music video, he was able to fight it off, he was able to push it back down, but it took him over a little bit. Not as much as the other bishops though. The other bishops, the previous generation of bishops, if you want to say that, had black paint like up to their noses, but Clancy's paint only goes up to his mouth area. He sings, "This is the last time that I try," and his new bishop form is revealed. And he's looking at the people in front of him, but he's not seeming to recognize them. He's not excited about this victory, you know? Like, he took down all of the bishops, they're gone. But he doesn't look happy to have done it. The screen fades to black, and then it comes back in, and at this point, the City Walls song is over, and instead the audio is what we thought originally was going to be the Torchbearer's theme song. I'm pretty sure it had played at concerts during a critical Torchbearer moment, and it also was in some early teasers of the contract, and it also plays in the background of the I Am Torchbearer video. We kind of thought maybe this is going to be music that's in a song that's about the Torchbearer, but it ended up only kind of being used here in this transition. It is an evil sounding little clip of music. So that piano starts playing, and we're looking at Clancy as he hands each of these 9 banditos new robes. He's turning them all into bishops, but when he gets to Josh, when he gets to the Torchbearer, instead of taking the jacket, he just looks at his friend. Torchbearer looks absolutely devastated and completely betrayed. Meanwhile, Clancy has no emotion on his face at all. Clancy waits for a little bit, but after the Torchbearer fails to take the jacket, he just moves on to the next bandito. At which point, the Torchbearer backs out of the room and leaves. And the audio paired with the devastation that is on his face, it is so heartbreaking. It's so good, it fits so well, but it sucks so bad. And I saw some people saying that at this point, because bishops can't see yellow, that maybe as soon as the banditos enter the tower, or maybe as soon as they refuse the robes, specifically as soon as Torchbearer refuses the robes, maybe Clancy, or this new bishop, can't even see him anymore. And that would mean that the last time they properly saw each other was that moment before going into the battle, where they look at each other. I just can't handle that. That is such a sad thing to think, but I do think there's some truth behind it, because there is zero recognition in Clancy's face. And then the last thing that we see of Clancy is him up in the tower with his 8 other bishops around him. And it is such a powerful shot, but it just hurts so bad because you wanted things to be better. Like, we were really hoping that he would break the cycle, he would get us out of this, he would make the city a better place, and instead he's becoming the very power that they were fighting against, which is something that we had known could have happened, because the whole thing that came from the letters from the concert, the hidden message that was in that was, we must destroy them or else we'll become them, and if we become them, we must do better. So this is him becoming the bishops, becoming the very thing that they were fighting against, hopefully as better leaders, but really, who's to say? He turned into a completely different person when he put on those robes, you know? Like, all the fight is gone from his face. It's total acceptance over this new identity, and I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, especially with how he was talking about power in his previous letters. But again, the paint is a little bit lower, and what if that means that he's slowly breaking out of the cycle, and eventually the paint isn't gonna be there at all? Which then brings us back to Nico feeling bad about the situation, because what if Nico had previously lived this experience? What if Nico was trying to take down bishops before him, and then he got stuck in the same cycle? And now he's watching this happen to the younger version. The final scene of this music video has Torchbearer on the ground. He's packing up a bunch of papers and also the Clancy, like, cat mask, and it seems like he's getting ready to give these to the next potential Clancy. We don't really get any resolution on what happened to the people that were in the fight on the ground. I'm assuming, you know, if they died, then they died. If they survived and they are loyal citizens, then they're gonna go back to the city. If they're banditos, they're gonna go regroup somewhere else. But also, a lot of them seem to be undead. They seem to come out of the ground. So at that point, I don't even know how many living citizens were a part of this battle, or if they are all still living in the city and they don't even know what's going on. And it's okay to not have all the answers. It's alright. It honestly makes the whole world feel a little bit more real, because you don't get to know everything that's going on all the time with everyone. And that's just gonna have to be okay. I would assume that because now there are 9 fresh bishops that are back in power, the citizens are gonna go back to worshipping them, and, you know, it's gonna be a very similar thing to what we saw before, which we already know that this cycle has occurred in the past. We were reading letters where they had discovered caves from people that had done similar things, which also, I'm upset that we never got to see the cave, we never got to see these areas outside of Dema. They were built up in the letters, and then we never got to explore them, we never got to meet these characters, even though people are assigning names from the letters onto the people that became bishops. But it's like we never officially got any more information from the citizens, so maybe it was just to expand the world and to make it feel like we know more people. Maybe it was setting a base, a foundation, so that they can revisit the story with different characters later. But I think it's for the best if we don't know everything that happens to everyone, you know? That's just how life goes. You're not gonna get all the answers for how it all turned out. So anyways, Torchbearer is kneeling on the ground, he's wrapping up all of this stuff, and then another bandito, and the only other bandito that's with him, which is why I'm saying I don't know what happened to the rest of them. The bandito behind him says, "I really like this Clancy," and Torchbearer agrees. He pauses, and he says, "That's not Clancy up in the tower anymore. We're gonna keep looking always." And this does confirm the idea that's been floating around for a while, and I feel like it got pretty popular with the overcompensate video, where that figure that had the mask on falls over at the end and it isn't Clancy. If you know what I'm talking about. At the end of that music video, like, the person that's been leading all the citizens is actually just Clancy seizing somebody in the city. But around that time, I saw a lot of people talking about the fact that Clancy might be a title more than a name of a person, or that maybe there was an original Clancy, but it has since been taken over as just the name of, like, the person that you look to. So in this situation, we all look to Tyler as this Clancy, who is going to lead them to a better future, break them out of the cycle, whatever it is. I really liked this Clancy, as in there have been others in the past, and then looking for more, they're going to find another Clancy in the future. Somebody else is going to take on that role. It's a name that's assigned to a person that's meant to break the cycle, but when they fail to do so, you have to keep moving forward. The effort is bigger than the individual in this situation. He's kind of representing the idea of freedom, and if he can't provide that, they can't just get caught up on it forever. Which, side note, I saw some people saying that, oh, the Torchbearer gave up on Clancy so quickly, it was so easy for him to leave the tower and to go find another one and to just replace his best friend. It's like, that is not what's happening, and that is not the message you should be taking away right now. Torchbearer has been fighting for this Clancy for years. He's been doing everything in his power. He's gotten all the banditos to back Clancy to try and get him into this tower, to try and get him to break the cycle. This is something that they have been working on for a long time. And the fact is, in this final moment, it just didn't work. Torchbearer has seen this happen before. They've had other Clancys. They've tried to have this rebellion occur. So he knew how it was going to end, but he still gave it a fair shot. He was hoping, yes, that this time would turn out differently, but, you know, you can't hold on to the past when it doesn't turn out exactly how you want. He's not going to stick by this guy that isn't doing what they need anymore. It's not that he's giving up on this Clancy or that he doesn't like him anymore or anything like that. It's that the Torchbearer and really all the banditos gave this Clancy everything that they had, and it wasn't enough. And sometimes that's just how it goes. You can give a lot of yourself to a person in hopes that it's gonna make things better, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. And sometimes it gets to a point where you'd be harming yourself more if you tried to stick with that person, and you have to just let it go. And that's an idea that is not new to this story at all. There's a line in Neon Gravestones, "Promise me this, if I lose to myself, you won't mourn a day, you'll move on to someone else." And that's what we're seeing here. And that's kind of where we need to talk about what the ending of this music video means, which this is all just an idea that I had in my head, you know? So I have no clue if this is what it's intended, I have no clue if this is how other people are interpreting it. I've been trying very hard to stay off the internet the past couple of weeks because I didn't want to get any other ideas in my head of what people are saying about this stuff. I just wanted to give my own thoughts on it first. So if you interpret this differently, or if there's another way that it can be explained, let me know. This is just how I personally am seeing the end of the story. Because the whole thing is like Neon Gravestones and the whole idea of vialism in the city, and if I lose to myself, all of that is referencing taking your own life, right? And sure, Clancy didn't do all of that, but he is taking in this darker part of himself that he's been fighting for a long time. For the past decade, we've watched as Tyler, or Clancy, or whatever you want to call him, has tried to separate his mental health struggles into a separate entity that he can fight against. with the idea that you can beat it, that you can somehow win, and that's just not reality. His transformation into a bishop is kind of reframing that whole fight. Because at the end of the day, like, he did beat Nico, Blurryface, whatever you want to call him. He took down the bishops. And then he turned around and he was one. And it's like, it can be confusing when you see that for the first time because you think, oh, he won. Why did he suddenly become evil? Like, I thought he beat the bishops and now everything's supposed to be okay. And what you have to remember is that this music video, this world, really is representing mental health and struggling with it and fighting to be better. And at the end of the day, yes, he defeated Nico. He didn't let this dark side of him take him down, but he became it. He sort of accepted that that's a part of him. This isn't necessarily a bad ending, but Tyler did say when he was talking about this album that it wouldn't be an ending that we like. And it's like, yeah, fair enough. It's certainly not a good ending where everybody walks off into the sunset and they rebuild the city to be a happy place, but this ending is a little bit more real, I would say. The new bishops are going to lead the city in, I guess, the best ways that they know how to, and if it starts to harm the people that are below them or the people that are around them, there's going to be a new Clancy that shows up to continue the fight. This isn't the Torchbearer abandoning Clancy. This is the Torchbearer putting his energy into what he thinks will be best, what he thinks will actually work and make an impact. Because at the end of the day, he's not just doing this for himself, and he's not just doing it for his friend, for Clancy either, right? He's doing it for the good of all the people that are being torn down by the city, by the bishops. All of this work is for a greater good, and sometimes you have to abandon one thing when you realize something else is going to work a whole lot better. But there's no world in which I would see this as the Torchbearer giving up on Clancy, because I don't think that's what it is at all. You can for sure choose yourself and choose to live a better, happier life rather than giving up everything you have for somebody that may already be past saving. At a certain point, if it's doing more harm than good to support somebody, it is okay to, like, consider your own well-being. And I for sure don't think this is Clancy turning evil either. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think it's Clancy learning to navigate the darker parts of himself without, like, letting that side of things take him down. He's not trying to completely push it away, to take it out of his life completely, but he's also not letting it overpower him. He's learning to live with this darker part of himself. And it's like, it's a constant process of learning and seeing what the threshold is and, like, trying to be okay while also, you know, occasionally things are going to take a turn for the worse. And it's like trying to be okay with things while also knowing that at points it's going to be more difficult and you could potentially hurt the people around you. So yeah, that's the City Walls music video. Clancy is a bishop. He's got 8 other banditos turned bishop around him, and Torchbearer sets off to find the next Clancy. The video fades to black, and then we get the most devastating end credits I've ever seen in my entire life. The last 2 or so minutes of this video is Intentions, the last song on the album, with end credits playing as if it's a movie, as if it's end credits playing that capture the last 10 years that we've lived. Immediately, Intentions is so recognizable because it's using the notes from Truce, which is the final song off of Vessel. They reversed that song and put it as the final song of this story. You can't do that. It's the same thing as incorporating Entertain My Faith into City Walls. It's like, these are all references to things that have been around for so long that so many of us have, like, ingrained in our hearts, you know? Like, I grew up listening to this music. It means so much to me and to so many people, and to now see it in the, like, it's the most perfect end credit music I've ever seen. Calling back to season 1, and just, it is still so difficult to listen to this song. The song is playing as clips from the music videos as well as pages of story planning are on the screen, and I can't even give you more details on that because it's really difficult to watch and I don't want to go over it again. There's text on the screen at one point that says thank you for believing in music videos. It gives a lot of great people great jobs, which isn't necessarily lore related, but I do think it's a nice anti-AI call out, because especially in a world that is just slowly kind of pushing arts out to the side because it's easier to make with AI, don't even get me started on that. This band and this project especially feels so human. I just think it's nice to have a little anti-AI call out in a world where so many creatives are being pushed aside by dull, heartless, generated content. Especially because it's getting scarily good and it's hard to tell what's real and what's not anymore. If you are a creative in any way, keep making things. Honestly, there is no greater power than just committing to things, making things, being human, and having experiences and trying to express that through art in any way. You don't have to be good, you just have to make stuff. It matters so much. The final screen says, the story of Dema, written by Tyler, Josh, Brandon, Mark, and then at the bottom, it kind of comes in, it just says, and you. I can't take this! And then the video ends by flashing over all of the era symbols that they've had, and I sobbed. I was a mess after watching this video. It was so rough. And then in the days that followed all of this, the band was posting funny pictures on their stories, they did a thank you post, casual stuff. Nothing to apologize for the absolute devastation that they caused. It is such a perfect ending. I truly could not have asked for anything better in terms of visuals, in terms of the music, and even like making end credits out of the whole thing, making it feel like it's this whole big thing that we were all a part of. Like, it's just, I hate to say it, but you really had to be there. Like, I know people were posting about it and being like, oh, well, there's gonna be a time where this is a past tense type of situation where it's like, right now we're living through the story, but eventually, and in the near future, it's going to come to an end. And now we're at that point where if people want to get introduced to the lore, it's already over. They can't, like, catch up. They're just learning it, and that's it. This is such a special thing that we've lived through, and I am so grateful to the band for creating something like this, where people can feel so strongly about the art. It gives me chills just thinking about it. That is the sole lore music video that we got out of this release, so we're just gonna be talking about the lyrics and the sound for the rest of the songs. So, like, my initial reactions, references to other lyrics, stuff like that, and there's for sure gonna be stuff that I miss when I'm talking about this, because there's so many places where the band could pull notes from old songs or lyrics that happen to line up and stuff like that, and I'm not gonna catch it all. So if you notice anything that stood out to you, or if you have different interpretations of the songs or anything like that, let me know, because I really do love to see the different ways that it can come across to people. It's always fun to see what you guys have to say about what these songs mean to you. And of course, everything that I say here is my opinion, but if we have different opinions on any of the songs, or if my interpretation doesn't line up with what you think, it's okay. We're allowed to think different things. We're all living different experiences. This is just how I'm taking these songs in. No hard feelings, okay? Okay, we're just gonna get into all of the songs, either what I took away from the sound or the lyrics or different ways that they could tie into previous works. Kind of just a free-for-all here, any thoughts that I had while I was listening to the album. And like I said, if you have any different thoughts, let me know in the comments. Starting out, obviously, with City Walls, which I mean, there were a lot of expectations on this song and everything that it needed to be, especially once they said that this is gonna be the only lore video that we get, where you know that the first song on the album has to wrap up everything that we've gotten for the entire 10 years. And I mean, obviously the video is incredible. I think the music pairs with it really, really well. And I think starting with a minute or more of just instrumental is a really smart way to introduce it, because it allowed you to have time to kind of get back into the world, to kind of remember the stakes and to remember where we're at right now. And then of course the lyrics themselves are describing the fight as it's happening. We're seeing it on the screen, but he's also singing about it, so it just feels really impactful. Like, the goal isn't to throw a bunch of metaphors and throw a bunch of hidden references in, it's just have this moment be everything. It's just have this moment be everything that it needs to be, and it really worked. And then having stuff like saying that the yellow tape is moving silently, and like establishing that the banditos are moving through the city. It's been a while since we've had lyrics that are that direct, so I really enjoy this song for that. And then of course straight up saying move it up, it's a breach, and incorporating the title in that way feels really powerful, especially with the visuals where every time he says that we're being thrown back into the previous years. So it's constantly reminding you of everything that came before it, but still keeping you very focused on where we're at right now. I did see people saying when he's asking, like, I wonder where you are, it kind of looks like he's asking that to the torchbearer, wondering where he is, why isn't he here helping? But to me, it reads more like, I wonder where you are, I wonder why couldn't you help me in this city, and he's talking to Nico. He's saying, you were supposed to guide me, where were you? But now the night has fallen, abandoned by the sun, kind of seems like, okay, well, Nico took the dark path, he's somebody that I can't follow anymore. And I like that a little bit more, especially with how the later songs on the album feel like they're a lot more about the relationship between Clancy and the Torchbearer. I feel like this song, it's okay if it's a little bit more focused on Nico, because there was, at some point, a relatively decent relationship between them where at least Clancy trusted this person, right? So even if it wasn't healthy in the way that Nico and the bishops were ruling the city, it was still like there was a better dynamic there, up until Clancy realized that things aren't right and they need to change. But him saying, I wonder where you are, I wanted you to show me, kind of feels like he's mourning the life that he could have had if everything had turned out better, if Nico was a better guide or better mentor or whatever. But of course you could also tie it to Torchbearer saying abandoned by the sun, literally with Torchbearer having the light and him not being there. He's been abandoned by his son. When he's singing, I wonder what would happen, who you thought I would be, in the second part of it, it kind of reminds me of the pacing of Drown, which is like, I don't know if that's intentional or if it's even something that stands out to other people, but it's something that I always feel Like, just the way that that line is spaced, to me, it goes back to Drown, which, if you don't know what that is, it's from Tyler's work, like, pre-21 Pilots. Of course, when he's singing From the Mainland to the Island of Violence, it's like, such a jaw-drop moment, because that, like, the Island of Violence and Coming from Migraine is such a big thing from Vessel. Again, a little detail that the fans that have been around are gonna recognize immediately. But it is also lore relevant because Volsoy, where the outside takes place, translates to Violent Island or something like that. So it literally, from the mainland to the Island of Violence, that's where he was, that's where he came back from. But all of that tying around to their earliest work, it just... I know in earlier videos I've said that Vessel isn't really part of the lore and that it starts with Blurryface, but they really wanted to tie it in. They really made it happen. So I fear I may have to take back what I said, because it seems like they want Vessel to be part of the story. It's very much the start of the cycle, even if it's not necessarily paired up with the music videos or anything. The themes are very much still there. And of course, in Migraine, he sings, "Sometimes to stay alive, you gotta kill your mind," and then in the City Walls music video, we literally see him killing Nico, which is supposed to be a representation of this part of his mind. It's just such a perfect blend of, like, tiny little references that people will get, but also not being so obscure that casual listeners won't be able to understand what's happening. When he's singing that he doesn't know how he can keep the top half glued, that calls back to the imagery from their very first self-titled album, 21 Pilots, where the person on the cover doesn't have a top of their head. But also, I feel like that part of the song is just so good at showing Clancy's uncertainty, where for pretty much all of the Clancy album, we see this character who is very confident, who feels very sure of the power that they have and the ability that they have to take over the city or to do something different or better or whatever he thinks is gonna happen. Where you have this guy coming in, he's saying, "I'm the only person that does it, the city needs me, I have to take this power," and then you get to this point in City Walls where he kind of was a little bit taken down by Nico for a second, and he's saying, "I don't have a clue how I'm gonna do this." And especially with "My smile splits around my head looks like the paint that he has when he becomes a bishop," it's just all this time he's been presenting such confidence, but then you get to this moment where things are actually taking a turn for the worse and he seems a lot less sure. But then of course he comes back with the line, "Entertain my faith," and I can't even talk about how significant that was to hear it the first time or every time after. I still get emotional even just thinking about it, how much that line means. Again, calling back from their earliest works. The power that comes with that line, and then pairing it with "Address My Soul," which I'm not super big on religion, I'll be real, so if you have a better interpretation of this, please let me know. I feel like I'm not qualified to speak on it, but to me, it very much seems like "Entertain My Faith" is kind of uncertain. It's kind of like, hey, I've strayed from the path, I might not be as dedicated as I'm supposed to be, but can you, this higher power, at least entertain the idea of me being here, being loyal, whatever it is. At least consider me here, even though I may not have been everything that I need to be for you. Maybe you haven't been as loyal or as consistent as you're supposed to be, but in this moment you're asking for support, you're asking for recognition, you're asking, is my belief in this moment enough? Versus the line, "Address my soul," which is immediately more confident, but it also kind of feels a lot more desperate. Where now it's not just like, consider that I'm here, but it's saying, look at me at my core, take me in exactly as I am, take in everything about me. Don't just entertain the idea, but address me at my very core. Take everything that I am, take everything I believe in, and still have that be worth something. And those two lines are paired with him saying, "This is the last time that I try," as we watch this final battle, where he's either gonna lose to Nico, he's going to defeat Nico and the bishops, or, as we see, he's gonna become Nico and the bishops. At the end of the day, he did defeat Nico. He did defeat this thing that he's been struggling with. He overcame that particular struggle, and he kind of learned to accept it in a new way, where it's a little bit less damaging to him, I would say. Like, he's learning to live with it, you know? And then at the very end of the song, you hear the start of Heavy Dirty Soul, because, of course, the cycle repeats. Heavy Dirty Soul, which is the music video that really brought us into this world. It's the thing that ties together this entire story. When Clancy escapes from the city, when he starts doing everything that we're gonna see, it all starts there. And to end this big song with that sound, I genuinely think this is such a perfect song to go out on with the story. I think it covers everything that it should. It wraps up the story, but it also gives so many references to the people that have been here the whole time, that understand the work that they've put out throughout their entire career. It's made for people that are going to respect the art, you know? And it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel unnatural, it doesn't feel like they're trying to cram every reference in. It feels like a very natural appreciation of everything that they've done, everything that's been leading up to this moment. I truly don't know how they could have done it any better, you know? It's such a powerhouse song to end the story, and it's so perfect for the music video that they made. Then the second song on the album is Raw Fear, all caps, no space. And I feel like pretty early on I knew that this is going to be one of those things that gets stuck in my head, just because the way that he says raw fear to lead into the new section kind of feels like a pickup note where you're constantly moving through the song, so it's just kind of addictive to listen to. And to me, the themes kind of feel like a brother song to Oldie Station, where that song is very much like, I'm getting older, but I'm learning to be okay with it, and, you know, life is passing by, but I can appreciate the little moments. Whereas this song is more, hey, life is constantly going by, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Like, that's the vibe of Raw Fear, is very much just like, oh no, life is continuing. And the sound, for whatever reason, is very much giving me Wallows, which is interesting. I feel like there are a lot of songs on this album that reminded me of other artists, which makes sense because they said they're trying to push the boundaries and do things that are different. But I like that it actually feels different from what they've previously put out. It's not like they were just saying that and then all they did was add a new sound effect or something. Like, all of these songs really feel like something new, like something they were trying to push out and work with. Learning all that really matters is a slow and painful lesson. Try to microdose to immunity, but you'll never ever get it. Like, it's just such... It's all about, like, accepting that life is passing, that time is going by, there's nothing we can do about it, and as much as you try to sort of come to terms with it, it's not really something you can even grasp. Time moving forward is so completely out of our control. And this might not be how the song is intended, but especially because at the beginning when they're screaming, that's his children, that's his girls. He said, hey, can you come scream into the song? And I was thinking about that, and I'm listening to the song, and I'm thinking about the line microdose to immunity and how life is always passing, it's a slow process, whatever. All of those things together, to me, kind of reminded me how when you become a parent, for a lot of people, you turn into somebody that's so constantly scared of what's going to happen to your kids. Where from the second your child is born, from every moment that they live, you're constantly worried, what if something happens to them? And then obviously as they get older, you have to sort of come to terms with that. You have to be okay with letting them go out on their own, with living their own lives. When they're first born, you kind of have to do everything for them and with them, but as they get older, you have to learn how to let them go. And to me, this song very much feels like that. Where of course you're dealing with time passing for yourself, you're watching yourself grow up and things change around you, but learning all that really matters in reference to having kids and deciding that that's the thing that matters, top priority in your life, and then constantly relearning how to navigate that relationship with your children in order to have the best outcomes for them. And then as they get older, trying to come to terms with the fact that they're going to go out into the world and you're gonna have to be okay with that. And no matter how much you want them to go out and you feel confident that they're safe, there's always going to be that worry in the back of your head where what if something happens to them? And no matter how much you try to combat that fear, it's always going to be there where it's like something could happen. I never feel completely confident because I know that they're potentially in danger. Or like, I don't know how I'd forgive myself if something were to happen. And I feel like that's kind of a darker way to explain it, just because talking about something bad potentially happening to kids is never a good thing. But it's like when you have a kid and then you're always worried that something could potentially happen to them and having to learn to be okay with them existing on their own and kind of accepting that you don't have control over everything in their lives. And if something is to happen, it's always a possibility, but you have to learn how to live despite the fear that it might, you know? You have to kind of deal with that fear head on. You can't let it control your life or your children's lives. I don't know. That's kind of what it reminded me of, especially because the kids are featured on this song. And then, of course, the line, I could build a tower with the times I was pretending, and just thinking about the city and the tower and the whole world that he built to try and understand what's going on in his own head. I just think that's a cool line. And I think it's funny because when we first got the title for the song, we kind of assumed it was going to be a dark and or lore-related video, because it's typed in the way that Blurryface would type stuff out, where it's in all caps and the spacing is weird, but Tyler had been talking about why that was and just said it just kind of felt like it should be. There's not really a reason for it, and I think that's funny, especially because the phrase raw fear is something we got in a Torchbearer letter at the Clancy tour. So it's like, it has every reason to be significant, but instead it was just like, yeah, it just kind of felt like the right thing to do for this song. The third song, Drum Show, I am not going to talk about it here. The last video I made, I talked about that song a whole lot. It's still top song on the album for me, honestly. I don't listen to it anywhere near as much as I had been when it first came out, but it means so much to me still. If you want to see my more in-depth thoughts on that, you can go watch the previous video that I put out, and I'm also gonna link an interview that Josh did where he talks about the creation of this song, just because I think it's kind of fun to hear how it came about, like how the song was created and how Josh feels about the whole thing. Because when it was first created, they had talked about how Tyler presented the song to Josh didn't really like it. So Tyler went back and rewrote it into something where when he brought it back to Josh just said, "How did you do that?" And I feel like that's such a funny thing, especially for a song that is so Josh focused. But the whole thing is like, Josh didn't write this song. This is something that Tyler wrote about what he thinks Josh is thinking. And it's really sweet to think about how close their friendship is, to where Tyler felt like he could accurately portray Josh, or to where he felt like he was allowed to do that. The next song on the album is Garbage, and at first when you read that title you think it's kind of a sarcastic, funny song, because again, when we saw the list of all the titles we were like, oh, I'm gonna have to say my favorite song is Garbage. And the first line of the song is just, I feel like garbage. So it feels very silly. It doesn't feel like it's meant to be a serious song, but actually I have come to really love it. I was completely caught off guard by how serious the lyrics are and how much I relate to it. In the chorus, he's singing about how he's biting down on his shirt sleeve, and people were compiling videos of him at concerts where he is doing just that and saying, oh, he's so self-aware. And I mean, yeah, this song is pretty self-aware, saying that you feel like garbage. And in the iHeartRadio segment that they did when the album was released, they did like an hour-long segment on iHeartRadio where they were talking about the songs in between playing them. But Tyler said that this is one of his favorite piano parts on the album, and that it had been floating around, he'd been carrying it with him for a long time, and he didn't want to mess it up, and he just sat down to write something, and he was like, well, this is how I feel. And that's kind of the vibe that went into this song. But it's like, it's straightforward, but I appreciate it, you know? And then everything from Would You Move Closer If I Grew Quieter, and then everything past that, it just feels so desperate, where it's like, yes, I'm having a hard time, yes, I feel at a really low point, please stick around, please still be here with me, don't give up on me. Ugh. Knowing that you might hurt the people around you, but still asking them to stay because you need it. Because sometimes that's just the type of thing you need. And it's kind of the opposite of what we talked about earlier, where it's like, yes, in the City Walls music video, Torchbearer Up and Leaves, and it's like, yeah, he's choosing to prioritize the things that matter, and right now that means he can't give any more support to this Clancy, who's already a bit past what they were working towards and all of that. And people saying, oh, well, he gave up on Clancy. And then you get a song like this where he's saying, don't give up on me. But it's like, there is a difference between having that self-awareness, knowing that you're not always in a good space, and kind of communicating that to the people around you, versus only letting things get worse, only hurting the people around you. At a certain point, they have to prioritize themselves and their well-being. And obviously that's a very tricky line to walk, where you have to choose whether or not to support somebody versus to prioritize your own well-being. And I do think a lot of it depends on how much work the other person is putting into bettering things. I mean, it's so circumstantial, obviously, but having this song where he's like, yeah, I might hurt you, please don't leave me. I really like how vulnerable and straightforward this song is. And I would say it's definitely up there with Drum Show in terms of relatability for me. The next song on the album is The Contract, which again, I made a whole video when that song came out, so if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts, I put it up already. It's still not a favorite on the album for me. I don't ever really feel drawn to listening to it. I feel like it's the one I'm most likely to skip off of the album. But that being said, it's still a very creative song, and I still do enjoy listening to it. But I would say, at least as of right now, it's kind of bottom of the list for me. Which could just be because I've heard it one too many times, and I'm just a little tired of it right now. So that's obviously not like, it sucks, I can't stand it. Just right now, I've been really enjoying every other song on the album. And those songs I had all listened to kind of as they came out. The rest of the album I put off listening to for 5 days, which is why this video is coming out so late, is because I couldn't emotionally handle the thought of all of this coming to an end, and I just wanted to hold on to it for that little bit longer. So it took a little bit to get into the rest of these songs. But the good thing is, I, for the most part, managed to avoid spoilers. But the next song on the album is Downstairs, and it's the only other song on this album that's over 5 minutes. When I first listened to this song, I thought, man, that intro sounds really familiar. But I couldn't think of where it was from, and I figured maybe it's just because they had used that segment of the song in the Instagram teaser that they did when they were putting out a little bit of all of the songs on the album. I thought, oh, maybe the sound is just really memorable from there, and that's why it sounds so familiar. And even before the song came out, people had been talking about how the title of Downstairs reminds them of Polarize, which is a song from Blurryface from 10 years ago, where he sings that his problems are hiding down the stairs. But, it's so interesting looking back at that now, because I truly had no idea. I was like, why is it so familiar? Why does it sound like I've heard it before? And then I listened to the rest of the song, and I'm thinking that the way he's singing it and the way that the whole thing is built very much to me feels like 2014 Imagine Dragons or One Republic or something like that. Like, that's the sound that I'm getting as I'm listening to this. I'm like, it's a very early to mid 2010s vibe, and I don't know why that is. It just feels like it's tied to a very specific era, and I was a little bit confused on why. But the thing is, people had recognized the song. Even when the Instagram teaser came out, they had already recognized it. When the band posted that live stream on Instagram, people immediately said, oh hey, Downstairs sounds a whole lot like Korea Demo. And Korea Demo comes from 2012. The band had been touring before Blurryface was out. This is way early in their career. They posted like a 2-minute vlog titled Korea 2012, where they're going to play a festival in Korea, and this is the background music for it. The reason that the start of the song sounds so familiar is because we heard it 13 years ago. And it's like everything about the song feels very much like their older work. Obviously, like we said, Downstairs, kind of tying back to Polarize, but also him singing Mercy like that. It very much is like their older songs, which felt a bit more religious. But watching that vlog of them before they became #1 album sellers, and just seeing them talking about how, oh, my dream is to perform in front of 200 people or whatever it is. Like, this is such a dream. I can't believe we traveled around the world, the farthest around the world and all this stuff. Like, just go for your dreams. I can't believe we're doing this. That's the vibe for the entire video. And then to hear this song from their second #1 album, to hear it in their old style, playing over video of them saying that they're living their dream, and just to see how far they've come even from that. Like, I get chills. It's such a special thing to see how far they've come and to see how much they care about it and to see how appreciative they were even then for what they were doing, and just to think about how far they've come from that. And they still kind of carry that same energy with them. Like, there are a lot of people that would let this level of success get to their heads, but these people very much have the same energy that they did back in that video, and it's just really nice to see that things worked out for them. I do think that's kind of a silly thing to say, but, like, truly, these are two people that care about the work that they're putting out. These are people that are so, like, aware of how much they want to do this, I guess. And it's like people posting the clips of them saying that they had no plan B, they had no other option, this was the only thing that they knew that they were gonna do. It's just really good to see people's dreams working out like that. And during listening parties for the album, Tyler had kind of sent out some additional commentary to play in between the songs. And when they're talking about Downstairs, he says that he had deleted the demo. He didn't have the song anymore, but Josh had been holding on to it for 14 years and brought it up and said, hey, what if we put this on the album? Again, I don't feel qualified to talk about the significance of this song with regards to religion, but I saw a lot of people saying that they could compare it to Clear in terms of vibe, which I think is a bold statement. I'll be real. I don't know if you can keep anything at Clear level, but it is interesting to see that that's kind of where people are at with this song. And then we get to Robot Voices, which I was not expecting this song at all. The start of it to me very much is giving 1975, and then you get to the lyrics and it's kind of a more cutie song. I feel like if there were to be a Jenna song on the album, it would be this one. Like, this is the closest thing to a love song on the album, but it turns out that this song is something that was kind of taken from another band. Tyler was listening to music and he heard this song called My Soft Spots, My Robots by Blanket Approval, and he was like, man, I freak with that. So he reached out to them and they found a way to sort of collaborate on this song where he took the bridge and turned it into the chorus for his song. It's such a cutie song. It's such like a bright feeling compared to the other ones, but I do think it definitely feels like it's not even a part of the album. Like, it feels a little bit like an outlier, which I guess isn't really fair because I was just saying how they're pushing what they're doing with all of the songs on this album. So I guess you really could say that about all of them, but this one stands out in a different way. Not in a bad way by any means, but I don't know. I feel like having the context of it being from somebody else's song kind of makes me appreciate it more, because rather than seeing it as an original work that just feels different, I can appreciate it as this is an artist appreciating somebody else's art and then choosing to build on it in a way that they thought might sound cool. I feel like I'm able to appreciate this song a lot more knowing that. Because I originally went into it thinking it's gonna be a really depressing song because of the teaser line that they gave about metal friends and everybody being like, oh, I don't know if we want to hear that. So it was just so completely the opposite of what I thought it was gonna be, and I feel like knowing that it came from just inspiration about a song that he liked, I feel like that makes me like it more. And I'm gonna link in the description a Reddit thread, I think, of somebody that had worked on writing this song, where they kind of talk a little bit about the process of making the song, working with 21 Pilots, that type of thing. But definitely go listen to My Soft Spots, My Robots, because it's really cool to see where the idea came from. And I feel like it does make robot voices make a lot more sense once you hear where it started. And then, oh, my beloved center mass. It starts off kind of silly. You can hear talking at the start. There are a bunch of different clips. Some things are from concerts where people just went a little bit viral with their moments. There's one part in the start of the song where it's the night that their drum was stolen from the show, and somebody said, girl, I really don't think you should take that, and that audio made it into the song. And I do think it is fun to include fan moments like this, especially if you know where those audio clips are coming from. It just feels kind of funny. But also, when they say that this story and all of this is them plus us, they really meant it. Like, they put the fans into this album. And it's funny because in the listening party commentary, Tyler is talking and he's saying that this is the type of song where the first time you listen to it, you're probably not gonna like it, and then it kind of grows on you over time. And I was immediately into the way that it sounds. I was kind of iffy about the intro, but the way that it starts, like with the actual music, I think is so good. But in his defense, it has grown on me even more as I've listened to it, so there's that. I don't want to say it and be wrong, but to me, the chords and kind of the pacing of the song was giving Frank Ocean when I started listening to it. I'm also not a huge Frank Ocean guy, so tell me if that's accurate or way off. But this is another song where he's talking about his shirt sleeves, where in Downstairs he said wearing your heart on your sleeve, in Garbage he said he bites on his shirt sleeve, and then in this one he's saying he's pulling down his shirt sleeves. I suppose it's just this habit that he has to kind of cope with uncomfortable situations, but I do think it's an interesting image to bring up that many times in one, like, I mean, not even one album, but in like one half of the album. I absolutely love the end of this song. I love the line about tattoos and how they only hurt when the meaning fades. And I love that he straight up says, hey, here's this bad thing that happened. I don't want to talk about it, because I feel like, especially with how vulnerable the band is in all of their work, there are some people that feel like they're kind of owed deeper explanations about everything that the band is going through or everything that the art is about. And it's like, at the end of the day, art is, I mean, it should be, I feel like, a way to express the things that you're going through, the things that you experience. That's why it's so awesome that humans can make art and that we don't need to rely on robots to do that thing. And it doesn't always have to be deep, it doesn't always have to be secretive, but sometimes there are things that you're going through and you want to express it, and the best way to do that is through your art. And if that means writing a song about it, then you do that. But you don't owe anybody an explanation as to what the song is about or all the details of what went down. So in this song, Tyler flat out says, here's this thing that happened and I don't want to talk about it. And it kind of reminded me of how when he was explaining Vignette from the previous album, he said this song is about addiction and just kind of left that in the open, and that was all he said on the matter. And then you have a bunch of people theorizing, oh, is it about him? Is it about somebody in his life? What is the addiction? All of these questions, and it's like, it just doesn't matter. The artist disclosed what they want to about the song and what it means, and that's it. And if you want to relate it to your own life, if you want to come up with your own meanings, that is one thing. However, if you want to try and put those meanings onto the person that wrote it, or you want to try and dig up what they could possibly be trying to say from it and how it relates to their own lives, I think that's a little too far. So I do like this song for just straight up saying, I'm not gonna elaborate. The next song on the album is Cottonwood, which kind of continues with the sad vibes. I think one thing they did really well with this album is giving you this full range of emotions, but in a way that feels very natural. It very much flows without feeling so jarring where it's like a dance song straight into the most depressing thing you've ever heard. If you're listening to the entire album from City Walls all the way to Intentions, there's nothing that feels super out of place, I feel like. We get Cottonwood, which we kind of knew was going to be a sad song, and Tyler explained that he wrote this about his grandfather who had passed earlier this year. I do like, for the sound, I like how the vocals kind of bounce around. I feel like it would be a fun song to sing, and I say fun very lightly because it's a very hard listen. And I feel like it's one of those songs where it's really, really easy to relate to just because a lot of people have somebody in their lives that they've lost, whether that be because the person died or left or you just had a falling out or whatever it is. I feel like this one is kind of covering a universal feeling type of thing. So it's very much something that people can relate to. It's the type of connection and the level of understanding that it hurts pretty bad, but it's also kind of necessary and again is a crucial reason for making art. To feel that human connection, to know that we are all kind of on the same level about these things. I will say the ending, where he is singing You Tore Me Up, it is giving Dear Theodosia, I'm sorry. It is giving Hamilton, but regardless, it's a beautiful song. The next song on the album is One Way, which kind of takes us out of the pit of despair that the past two songs left us in. I had no expectations going into this one. I read the title and I thought about one-way roads, and that's about as far as I got, so I really didn't know what I was getting into. I think the thing that stood out the most to me and the thing that I really like in this song is the bass. I think it just feels really powerful, it feels really sturdy. And I do think it's a nice in-between song for the sad ones and then the more fun, bouncy ones that come after this. I feel like it's a nice middle point. The lyrics aren't super focused on one thing, it's kind of just a song, but in a positive way, you know? I'm not saying that as like, oh, it's a nothing type of song. I guess I'm saying this is like a palate cleanser song to get us to the end of the album. And then it ends with a voicemail from Josh, where he says that going from One Way into Days Lie Dormant, which is the next song, feels like quite a vibe change. And then we go straight into Days Lie Dormant, which I just think is a funny little thing. Again, making the album feel more personal. And unfortunately, all I have written here for Days Lie Dormant is that everything but the line, my days lie dormant, totally slips my mind. As I've listened to it more, it's definitely grown on me. I've learned a little bit more of the lyrics, so it's just more fun to hear. But I wouldn't say it's a favorite yet. I can't even really off the top of my head think of what it sounds like, you know? It's just one of those, but I think it's one of those things that I'll come to appreciate with time. Tally, on the other hand, the second to last song on the album, and it is such a powerhouse of a song. It is immediately recognizable because it's intimidating. It starts off really fast, really strong. It's a little bit overwhelming, but it does kind of feel like a better ending to the story, like aside from Intentions, which obviously is like the ending credits. Also, side note, what do we think of this guy? You freak with this guy? His name's Biscuit. Do we love him? He hasn't been in frame. I need you to know he's been on my lap this entire time, just so we're on the same page here. I just feel like I had to let you guys know that he's been here this whole time. Anyways, Tally very much feels like what the ending is meant to be, almost. And it very much feels like the only other lore song on the album, where sure, you could tie some of these to the characters, but I feel like this one is meant to be part of the story. Even the first line goes straight into, I lost my rank and title, I turned my back on it, and we saw Clancy literally with his back to the Banditos. He is abandoning the title of Clancy, which, as they said, that's not Clancy anymore. So this song very much feels like it's supposed to be part of the world, whereas the other ones were, I mean, even from the Clancy album, Clancy and Breach, there were a lot of songs that felt a lot more personal rather than lore-based, but this one is very much for the characters, I feel like. And then going along with the idea of cycles, with you and I both know how this goes, all this stuff, like it's stuff that ties perfectly with the characters and everything that we know about the story. You wanna love me, I'll let you down, still now you believe in me somehow, which would most likely be Clancy singing to the torchbearer saying, hey, we've done this cycle a lot of times, we know how it's gonna go, I'm probably gonna mess this up, I'm probably going to betray the plan that we have, but at the end of the day, you still believe in me, you still want me to be the one. And then of course that kind of reminds me back to Garbage, where he's saying, don't leave me, saying, hey, I'm gonna lash out, I'm gonna hurt the people around me, but please don't give up on me. Now we're kind of seeing that, but in a more positive way, where it's saying, hey, I might mess up, but you still believe in me. It's not desperation, it's not begging the person to stay, it's saying they will stay here. And isn't that sweet? And also, another reason why it feels like it's part of the story is because he says, I let you down, I breached your trust. It's the only other song that flat out says breach, so it very much feels like it's meant to be part of the story. And then the final line of the song is, still now you believe in me somehow, and it kind of, to me, feels like this is the ending as we're supposed to interpret it. Like, Intentions, as Tyler was saying, is how he interpreted the ending, how he interpreted City Walls, It's him kind of coming to terms with that ending of the story. To me, this song almost feels like how the fans are meant to interpret it, where it's like some people were so disappointed and thought that it's such a terrible, sad ending where they didn't win. But the thing that we're meant to take away is that the torchbearer keeps on fighting. He was there, he tried his best to do this thing because he believed in it. And even when things got difficult, even when they were challenged, even when it seemed impossible, he still believed in this Clancy. And sure, it didn't work, and at that point he had to reassess what really mattered and he had to decide how to go forwards, but, like, when we're watching the story, Clancy, sure, he's the main character, but really the torchbearer is kind of the person that we should be striving to be, where it's like you are that support for somebody, you're there when people need it, you're checking in on your friends, you're making sure the people around you are okay, and you're striving to do what you think is good, not just for yourself, but for anybody else that may need help. Being that person that somebody can lean on, and obviously knowing your own limits, knowing when you need to take a step back and focus on yourself, but still being there and letting people know that they are loved and that they are cared for and that they're worth fighting for. Like, that feels like the thing to take away, and this song feels like it's laying that message out a little bit more clearly. And it's funny because when they're talking about this song, Tyler actually wasn't vibing with it, but Josh really liked it. So this is another one that we have Josh to thank for getting it onto the album. And then that brings us to Intentions, the final song on the album. As we said, this is the ending credits. This is what's playing as they fully wrap up the story, as they thank everybody, as they thank us for being part of the story. And it's perfect. Again, it is the perfect ending. I mean, after City Walls, to then play this, which I don't even know how much I could talk about this song. I love it so much. I will say, if they thought that there's a vibe change in between One Way and Days Lie Dormant, the change between Tally and Intentions gave me such emotional whiplash. Tally is such a powerhouse of a song, and to then go to this, which is Truce level of sad, it takes me out every time. It's only 2-ish minutes, similar to Truce, which is the final song off of Vessel, and the reason is because the music in the background is Truce reversed. It's such a smart artistic move to use the song that is so immediately recognizable, even if it's reversed. Those notes stood out right away, at least to the people that know the songs very well. So it's a really smart move to bring that back for the ending here. And we did kind of get a hint that this song was going to matter, because in the physical mail that they sent out, the hidden message in the letter was "The sun will rise and we will try again," which is a line from Truce, so it seemed like it was going to come up. It could also have just been that that's, you know, significant for the rebellion, where they have to just keep fighting every morning. Like, that's a pretty standard idea for rebellions, but little did we know, we just got Truce Part 2. We were not ready for that. And the lyrics of Intentions, which Tyler had talked about how this is how he interpreted City Walls and what went down. The song acknowledges that things will go wrong in every way, but it asks, did you learn? It's basically just saying, do your best, do what you think is good, let everything else fall into place. Things aren't gonna go right a lot of the time, and you just gotta do it again. When I heard this song the first time, at the end of the City Walls music video, and all of their symbols went on the screen, it's been a long time since I've cried like that. This song is so rough to listen to, but I think, especially with Truce at the end of Vessel and then this at the end here, it is such a perfect way to sort of bookend the story. Again, perfect decision for the start and the end of this album. So incredibly well done. And then a little bit after the album came out, the band announced that they're going to be selling Volume 2 of the Digital Remains, which, if you remember last year when Clancy came out, they had posted the Digital Remains for sale. And it was just spend a couple dollars, get a PDF of a bunch of images of stuff kind of relating to the lore or the album, so whether that be pictures of them performing or from music videos or just concept art, that type of thing, pages of handwritten lyrics. And there was also a lot of imagery of stuff that, I mean, I don't even know where it comes from. I don't know why it was made, or if it was just to create a vibe for that content specifically. And if you remember back then, people immediately tried to overlap images because they noticed that shadows were lining up in weird ways, or that, you know, flames or their bodies or whatever. You could line up the images and they would sit on top of each other pretty nicely in a way that kind of looked like something was going to be revealed. It took quite a while, people weren't figuring it out, and then they ended up making it their Twitter header because we just weren't figuring it out fast enough. It was a whole thing. They gave us a second set of digital remains for this album. It came with 50 images from the Breach era, along with an extra song titled Drag Path. And if you've been following the story for a little while, that title might be familiar to you, because the lyrics to Drag Path were actually written in the previous Digital Remains. So we kind of knew that this song existed, and we were expecting it to be on the album, and then when it wasn't on there, it was a little confusing. But now it's finally making its appearance. Before we get into that, I do want to kind of talk about the Digital Remains a little bit, talk about the pictures that are on there. Of course, I'm not going to go over all 50 right now because some of them are just things that look nice. And also just because it is paid content, I feel a little weird putting it all here, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them because I feel like they're significant. Of course, the cover picture, which features Clancy Tyler with his arms up, and people kind of said it looks like the skull of a deer, or also that he looks like a sai, like the weapon that is the Skilded Icy era. It just looks evil. It just has an evil little vibe to it. Image 7 out of 50 is a black background with red text across it and a bunch of images of stuff from the era. But one of the things that stands out is across the whole picture is the word Torchbearer, but in the Raw Fear font, which we'll talk about it in a little bit, but some people did also think that that meant that we're gonna get more Torchbearer content, I guess. We'll get into that. There's an image that's titled Breach, the final piece of the Trench Saga, which is interesting because at the end of the City Walls music video, we got the story of Dema, but then this is titling it as the Trench Saga. It might mean something, it might not, but regardless, it's interesting that they've, after all this time, given it not one but two names. There's an image of, like, a map of the city of Dema with bishop names all around it. Clancy is added in as one of the names of the bishops, which it could be like, oh, he replaced Nico, but Nico is on there. It could be, oh, he replaced Keon's because Keon's died, but Keon's is on there. But also, why is Clancy listed as the name if Clancy is supposed to be the symbol for the rebellion? It isn't necessarily a person. So that's interesting. I don't know if all of the bishops' names are on there because it does kind of cut off on the sides, so I don't think you can see all of the names. But it honestly could just be a picture for the vibe, just to be like, oh yeah, Clancy's on their side now. There are a couple of images of anti-Clancy propaganda from posters that I guess the city had put up, where it's just like the type of thing of like, have you seen this man? And it's talking about Clancy. And then there's one picture where it's a whole wall of these posters, which is covered with graffiti that says vialism kills. And it's like, they're expanding the world in a way to where if they wanted to, they could continue this story and they could keep building on this world that they're only just setting up with these images. Like, we haven't really seen anything about how the bishops are telling the citizens about Clancy and about the rebellion. So to then see all of this after the story is finished, it makes the whole world feel a little bit more real, but it also makes you think, what if they continue with something to do with this, because it seems like they're still building on it. So I guess it makes sense why people are hopeful that more could be coming, is because it does seem like they're trying to expand on what they already said was done. Also, there was one poster where in the background you can kind of see what looks like the city is promoting the Blurryface album. So then you start to wonder, okay, well, did the city make the Blurryface album? Is there a reason why they wanted the citizens to hear that? Like, what do you mean the entire Blurryface album is part of the city's propaganda for, like, what is happening? And as with the first one, I did see people trying to overlap these images, trying to come up with some code that we need to find in them, or hoping that there's going to be another ARG that wraps things up, that maybe gives us another music video, possibly for Drag Path, the song that is with this Digital Remain set. I don't think anything has come from it yet. I do think it would be kind of interesting and a fun little thing to give to the dedicated fans, to be like, here's one final piece of the story for you if you can figure it out. I do wonder how long people are going to work for this band and try to figure things out before they decide, no, it's done for real. Because at this point, we're so conditioned to believe that there's always going to be more. And now that they flat out told us that it's done, which last time they lied, but it was kind of an obvious lie, this time they said it and it seems to be real, but we all have trust issues, so who's to say? And then that brings us to the actual final song that we got, which is Drag Path, and to be honest, just because it's not on the streaming service that I use, I have only listened to it one time, so I don't even know what to say about it. But to me, it kind of came across to where if Tally is the way that we're supposed to interpret the story, and Intentions is how Tyler interpreted the story, this is how the characters, and specifically Clancy, interpreted the ending. Or you could also see it as Tally being what the good ending is, Intentions being how the torchbearer is feeling, and then this song being Clancy. Because the entire song is him saying, hey, I dug my heels into the gravel so you could find me. Did you find me? Could perhaps maybe you find me? It very much seems like this is Clancy through all his efforts of escaping and everything. We've seen him being followed by the torchbearer up until the final moments. The torchbearer is looking for him, is coming for him, so this is him saying, things are a little rough right now, could you maybe come find me? It's a lot more of an emotional song than how I'm describing it, so I would definitely recommend listening to it if you're able to. I just personally don't feel all that attached to it because I haven't listened to it enough to care on the same level as the other songs. But I did kind of see people agreeing on the idea that this song is giving post-credits scene. It's like after the story is done, we're getting a final check-in with our main character before we say goodbye. And also, the term drag path we've seen before. We saw it last year, not only in the Digital Remains when we got the lyrics, but also in the I Am Clancy video, he mentions a drag path. So it's like, this is an idea that has been around. And that's why people are thinking maybe if there's gonna be more content, if there's gonna be some final thing to uncover, it could be a drag path music video. But in that video, as he's in trench, he says this drag path was different because this time the banditos saw him. So it pairs really well with this song that's saying he found me. And then I kind of wanted to spend the rest of this video going over theories that I saw, just interesting things that people have been talking about. A lot of this does come from stuff that I saw people posting, so if it's an idea from somebody else, I'm going to try my best to put it on the screen to give credit to whoever it is. But some things are just kind of generally accepted thoughts that are going around, so I'll do my best. And again, tell me what you think about all of this. Do you have your own theories for the story, for how things ended, for what maybe could be coming if they were to give us something else? One theory that I saw going around a lot is about the torchbearer and potentially how long he's been alive, because at the end of the City Walls music video, the bandito and the torchbearer are talking and they say, I really liked this Clancy. So then people start thinking, okay, how many other Clancys did they know to where they're able to say that this one is the one that they liked? And then if you combine that with the ending of the jumpsuit music video where you see Nico looking up at the torchbearer, and it could just be a way to be like, oh, these guys are against each other, they're fighting each other, whatever, but it's also like, okay, is there recognition here? Is there some world in which Nico and the torchbearer were closer? So then people are thinking, what if the torchbearer is actually not aging, and he also tried to save Nico from this same fate, and the cycle repeated, and now he's fighting with this Clancy to defeat that Nico, and that's why they looked at each other like that, is because they knew each other from a different time. But it's not like that's the only explanation for why they said that. It could also just be that they hear stories of previous Clancys, but this is the one that they happen to be working with, so when they're saying, oh, I really like this one, they're just saying it because it's the one that they know. Or maybe this movement got farther than when they had tried in the past with other torchbearers and other Clancys. And when Nico is looking at the torchbearer, keep in mind, he can't really see the banditos because of the yellow thing, but if Nico were to recognize the torchbearer, it could be more like remembering the person that was there for him, not necessarily that this specific torchbearer was also his, which then led people to think, what if Keon's was Nico's torchbearer, and that's why Keon's was kind of an outlier for the bishops, and maybe the reason that Keon's became a bishop, but this torchbearer didn't, is because Keon's thought maybe he could keep fighting and could try and get Nico to be on the right side of things if he was close with him like that, so he joined the bishops, he took the robe when it was offered. Whereas in this one, the torchbearer realized that he needed to leave the situation and it wasn't gonna do any good to join and to continue the cycle in that way. So there are all these different ways that you can interpret the ways that the characters are interacting, and I don't know if we'll necessarily get an answer for which one is the intended relationship with all of these characters. And my whole thing with that is like, the power that the bishops have, where they're able to seize the citizens and they're able to, I mean, people were like, I don't know how long they've been this age, so part of the power is that they're not aging the same way that everybody else is, or just that the bishop figures have existed for that long, but they've been passed down. Regardless, the bishops kind of have this presence where they're always around, they've never not existed, they've been this way for a very long time, so I feel like it would be weird to have a torchbearer that also doesn't age, because the whole message that they say is like, it's an honor and it's a privilege to grow old. So to then have the main character that's fighting for all of this to not age, I feel like that would kind of go against the message that they're trying to say. Like, I'm not sure there would be a point in having the torchbearer live forever or for an extended period of time when the whole message that they're trying to say is that it's okay and it's actually quite a good thing to grow older. I saw somebody post a really cool comparison of the Snapback music video, the City Walls music video, where the way that Tyler puts on the robe and he's staring out the window, and the way he's got his arms out when he's putting it on or something looks very similar to how in the Snapback video, he's got this like barber's thing on and he's got his arms out in a similar way. and it just looks very similar. And then the same way where he is staring out the garage at the end of the video looks like city walls. And then also thinking about that and thinking about how when Clancy is looking out the window in the City Walls music video, it looks like the Skilled and Icy poster. It's like, how long have they been thinking of this specific imagery that they wanted to end the story on? Again, how much of it is coincidence? They gotta stand some direction, right? It's possible that they just happen to be standing that way, but what if these are specific images that they had been thinking of for a while that they knew they wanted to incorporate? It's just interesting to see how, like, perfectly some of these things line up. I saw some people trying to talk about what the albums could mean, what they're meant to represent, and how it feels like the Clancy album feels a bit like Relapse, and then the Breach album feels more like the emotional part of that, and then starting to get over it, dealing with the aftermath, everything like that. And I would say the clearest example, like in songs for these albums, would be Vignette from Clancy and then Intentions from Breach, where Vignette, he flat out said, is about addiction, so there's not really an explanation needed there. But then for Breach, Intentions, where he's saying you will mess up, things are gonna go wrong, but what did you learn from it? How are you gonna grow from it? That type of thing. Where it's like, especially when you're dealing with something like addiction, it's kind of a constant fight, a constant process of getting better and then falling back into old habits, and you know, you're never truly over it. For a lot of people, that's the type of thing that's always present in some way, and you just have to keep fighting to get past it. And obviously it gets easier with time when you break the habit and you're starting to get better, but it's always kind of lurking in the back of your head. So to have Intentions where it's like, yeah, you will mess up, it's gonna happen, but now what? It seems like the Clancy album is a lot about the fight in the moment and the determination, and maybe kind of going a little too far and thinking that you're too good for this thing or whatever. And then on the other hand, Breach feels a lot more emotional. It feels kind of like a step back in terms of how it's telling that story, but not in terms of music or anything. Just it feels a little less aggressive about what it's saying, I feel like. I saw people wondering about if there's a different timeline for the letters than what we originally thought, because when we got the letters at the Clancy tour, when we got the Torchbearer and Clancy and then all the citizens, it seemed kind of clear that these messages were all happening in between this moment where they're going into the battle and where they're preparing and then when the battle's happening, but we didn't really know when after. We didn't really know what happened to the city, the citizens, or anything that we had seen. We were just sitting in that moment of preparing for battle, getting everybody ready, and then finally moving in, and that's where we were sitting. So it seemed like these messages are all happening either right before or during the battle. But then people were kind of looking back at it now after we've seen City Walls, and they were thinking maybe the last message that the Torchbearer said to Clancy, where he's saying we must do better, maybe that is coming after this battle, and this is the Torchbearer reaching out after everything has gone down, after Clancy has become a bishop, and he's saying we have to do better, which again goes along with that message that they gave us in the letters. If we become them, we must do better. It seems like Torchbearer is doubling down on that message, maybe after the transformation has already occurred. And it's like, it does have a kind of different meaning depending on when it was intended to be given to Clancy, because if it happened before the battle, it would obviously be a reminder of why they're going in, what they plan on doing, if they had any agreement. I know when the contract was coming out, when we see the image of Josh handing off the jacket, a lot of people are thinking, okay, well maybe there's some agreement here that Clancy may or may not stick to, and in that case this letter could be another way of reminding him of what they had discussed. But if it's given to him after he turns into a bishop, then it would be more of a way of reminding him that he does still have people that support him and believe in him. And at the very least, if he's going to take on this new role, if he's going to have this new power, at least try to do better than the people before you. Try to lead in a more kind way. Try to care for the citizens that are under your ruling now. And I also saw kind of an interesting idea with that, where they were saying, what if these letters weren't even written for this Clancy necessarily? What if all of these letters from the Torchbearer or from whoever are written before, and that's part of what the Torchbearer is carrying with him, that he gives to each new Clancy as a way to sort of guide them down the path, as if he's testing all of these different dialogue options to see what's going to inspire Clancy the best. I don't think that's what's taking place, because it would honestly kind of take away from the emotion if it was not even written for the specific person that is receiving it, but it's a cool idea to think that either the Torchbearer is living through these generations of Clancys, or that the person who's assigned the role of Torchbearer has a way of passing down all of the tools throughout generations to inspire future Clancys. I like both of those thoughts. Of course, there are lyrics that tie in with what we saw with the ending, so we got the whole thing of you won't mourn a day and you'll move on to someone else, and then we see the torchbearer doing exactly that. Also, the song, A Car, a Torch, a Death, which lays out exactly what we got. We have the car, the heavy dirty soul car that sets on fire that starts all of this. We have the torch, as in the torchbearer, and then we have a death. And you could say it's the death of the bishops, or you could say it's the death of the Clancy that we know. This is a new version that has risen up. And then there's also stuff like the line, he goes by Nico, he told me I'm a copy, which at the time seems like Nico, the bishop, is just mocking him and saying, oh, you'll never be anything. And of course, as we learned about the world, we learned that these rebellions have happened before and everything like that. So it's like, oh, he's just another leader in this rebellion. But combining that with the fact that the torchbearer is planning on finding another Clancy and that it's not Clancy in the tower anymore, the fact that the letters are in third person, all of that together, it's like, oh, okay, he actually is just a copy. That's not even his name, that's not his identity, it's a role that he's taking on. He's just filling this place, but the cycle is continuing, and every single time it's just another copy of the same thing. There will be another Clancy, there will be another torchbearer to guide him. It wasn't as mean as it first sounds. What Nico was saying in that moment is true. And then you start thinking, okay, well, if Clancy, that we know, is a copy, then Nico is also a copy, and maybe they lived the same life, and he's saying all of this and feeling bad because he knows how the story ends. Something else to talk about is when the digital remains came out for Breach, there were, of course, people trying to find things within the images, whether it be codes or ways to overlap the images or whatever. On one of the propaganda posters that was talking about Clancy being a bad guy, there's a little number at the bottom which people thought could be a code for something. It's 12897289.09, and people thought maybe that could mean something. Like I said before, people are trying to overlap these images to find anything. I don't think anything was found yet. I don't know if people have given up on that or what the deal is, but there are just certain images either from the end credits where they were showing like storyboard and project work that they were doing to figure everything out, and then there's also the images in the digital remains where people are saying, okay, but surely this has to mean something, like they emphasized a specific bishop at this moment, or they have a certain song highlighted and maybe that means that we're supposed to do a certain thing based on that, or maybe that bishop means something more here that we need to look into. And it's like, yes, it is possible, but also we don't know how old these resources are, and it's possible that they're just showing us old material from maybe old ideas that they had that didn't end up working out. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's clues for us to follow right now. Again, if that is what ends up happening, if they are trying to give us something and we just haven't figured it out yet, I do think that would be a cool way to go out and a cool way to bring the fans in one last time. But I'm not gonna sit around waiting for it, you know? Right now, I'm kind of just happy with what we got. And if people take the time and they find something extra, then good on them. But I'm not hoping for all of that. And kind of going along with that, I saw people thinking that there may have been multiple endings recorded, like multiple endings of the City Walls music video, and that there could have been 3 different endings based on which box set for the CD sold the fastest or sold out first or whatever, something based on the sales with those CDs. And because one sold faster than the others, that was the ending that they decided to give us. And I would say, considering how expensive they said the music video is, it would be weird if they had made 3 endings just in case we happen to buy a different one. But I also think it would be weird to have 3 endings saved and recorded that they're going to reveal at some point. So it seems like that would kind of not be worth it, really, because also they are trying to get a message across with this entire story. So when we're getting to the end of a 10-year-long metaphor for dealing with your mental health, which at the end of the day is what Blurryface is, I do think it would be kind of weird to put it in the fans' hands in that way. I feel like you kind of do have to be intentional about how you want to end a story like this, because it has to be hopeful enough to where people still feel like it's worth it to go on, but also not so hopeful that it's unrealistic. So to have 3 endings and to kind of leave it up to fate and leave it up to what the fans think is the coolest aesthetic, I feel like just wouldn't really be fair to the story. And actually, before we go further, I should probably talk about those box sets, because they were kind of big merch sales that went on. Because a little bit before the album was released, they announced 3 exclusive box sets. So you could either get Dark Clancy, you could get Torchbearer, or you could get Nova Bishop, and those were the 3 different aesthetics for the box sets that you could get. So, you know, looking at that and thinking, oh, well, Dark Clancy got the most sales and that's why he became evil. That was sort of the thought that people had, where it's like, okay, well, if we had bought a different one, maybe the ending would have been more Torchbearer-centric or something like that. But each box has a totally different aesthetic. So the Torchbearer box has kind of a canvas green outside and then it's wrapped in yellow. The Dark Clancy box is a leather black box and then it has red on the outside. And the Nova Bishop one is kind of a red velvety and it's wrapped in black. And actually, I couldn't help myself. I know in the last video I said not to buy merch that you can't afford, but they're so cool. I bought two. So I thought we could take a second and open them together because I have not actually opened them yet. I do kind of already know what's inside. It does explain it when you buy it, but I hadn't seen it all in detail. I will say all three boxes are mostly the same. There's one thing that's majorly different on the inside, but for the most part it is just an aesthetics thing. So this one is the Torchbearer box. We're kind of matching right now, which is very cool. So it's a CD box set. It's got lots of fun little things inside. So if you open it up, you start off with the character card right away. And this is the thing that is different in between the different box sets because they're each based on the character that you bought. So this one is specifically about the Torchbearer. I'll put it on the screen so you can see it better, but it's basically just, here is the character's name, here is their code name, the association, and then any file notes and recommendations for what to do with them. So for example, this one says that the Torchbearer's name is unknown, that he's the unofficial constant in a fractured trench landscape. He's considered harmless by vilest standards, but presence is persistently influential and may invoke rebellion. Of course, you got the CD in the CD box set, and then if you flip that up, you get a bunch of fun little stuff in there. At the top is this pack of stickers. So you have a plain 21 Pilots, picture of the album cover, picture of whatever this symbol is, which is kind of like a jacket handoff on the inside. But then this part also kind of looks like handing off while wearing robes. And then the same thing on a bigger one. And then the other thing that kind of varies by box, which it's mostly just color. I'm pretty sure the design is the same for all of the boxes, but it comes with this bandana. It comes with a poster. It comes with a poster of the guys, but then on the other side, a poster of the city burning. And we will talk about all that city burning imagery in a second. And then the last thing is just kind of a book of pictures. And despite the fact that I don't listen to CDs, I did get two, and that's my own bad, and I'm going against my own advice, but I simply could not get it. And then I'm not gonna go through it again in this, but it's basically all the same stuff in there. So we already kind of talked about the Torchbearer's card. Then there's Dark Clancy's card, which lists him as an uprising icon that's charismatic and unpredictable. It says he has mass influence and displays behavioral divergence, and he's dangerous to the city's ideology, and he's marked as a verified threat. And then the last card for the Nova Bishop box, he's not given a name. He's given the rank of Bishop, but it says provisional, which means it might be changed later. And it's interesting to think about the fact that they intend on him in a bishop role as being just a temporary thing, which I will say they never confirmed that his new title is Nova Bishop. That's just something that we got from this box set. So I don't know if that's going to come up anywhere else, or if it was a cool name that they decided to only put out through this one piece of merch. Regardless, it says that the citizens are optimistic and divided about his role, and that the rise of this bishop followed the death of the previous command. He was elevated by the people as a symbol of rebirth, though preliminary analysis confirms unstable duality. So it seems like this new bishop isn't as certain in his role and in his new ruling as he might seem. And then the last thing that I really want to talk about is the image of the city burning and kind of what that means, why it didn't happen. Because throughout all of the Clancy era, through the digital remains, and even, looking back at the outside music video where you can see in the end of it what looks like the city on fire, so people have been expecting something like that to happen for a while. And then the same thing at all of the Clancy nights while they're touring. They had the city up on the stage, and then they walk up to it and it burns, except for that last night where Clancy walks away and the torchbearer watches it burn by himself. And I talked a little bit about a theory about the fire in the last video, where there was this idea that Clancy might turn evil, he might end up in the tower, and the torchbearer is going to end up alone, where he makes the decision to set the entire city on fire in order to break the cycle. And maybe that's why he's alone at the end of that tour. Again, I don't know how likely that is, just because they do kind of want to keep the message a bit uplifting so that people still have a reason to keep fighting, rather than thinking that the solution to poor mental health is just to burn everything to the ground. So I'm trying to think, what other reasons might they show the city burning? And it could be that it's just a metaphor of sorts and it's trying to show what the Banditos are trying to do, but it's not literally saying they're going to burn it down. It's just that's kind of their intention, is to start everything fresh. I saw an interesting theory that said that the digital remains could be like Clancy's version of what Skilled and Icy was, where that was all about the city and the bishops trying to present Clancy as this guy who's on their side now, and they're putting out all of this work that they were forcing him to do, but it was supposed to come across as though Clancy is kind of working with them. And they were saying how maybe the digital remains is like Clancy trying to put out a certain message, and it's not necessarily that the city is burning or that they're going to burn it down, but it's more putting a message out there, like that's his own personal Clancy propaganda. But the idea that we never saw a fire at all in any way for the ending of the story made people even more believe in the idea of a secret ending or different endings based on different things, where it's like, oh, well, we were supposed to get this imagery and we didn't get it, so therefore there must be a different ending. And it's like, I guess that could be possible for sure, but I mean, why might you see fire if it's not included? Like, artistically, what reason could they have for representing it in their previous work but not including it in the final story? And I think the idea that I like the most is that the city burning is the plan made by Clancy and the Torchbearer. That's what they're trying to do. They're gonna get into the city, they're gonna have this massive battle, and then at the end of it, together, they're going to burn the city and they're gonna start things fresh. So then when Clancy goes in and he breaks the promise and he goes his own way, he leaves the Torchbearer, he abandons the plan, the city doesn't end up burning because things changed from what they had planned. That outcome never plays out, and it's not because we didn't buy things the correct way, but it's because Clancy went a different way than what was expected and what everybody wanted from him. We wanted to see the city get taken down in such a dramatic way because the city represents all of these bad things, but at the end of the day, Clancy wasn't in on that plan as much as we hoped. And again, as people are hoping for a final music video or some sort of conclusion past what we got, it's always possible that they bring this imagery back into it in some way and that they do end up setting the city on fire, but as of right now, that's what I'm gonna choose to believe, is that it was meant to represent the ideal situation where they followed through with their plan, but because Clancy deviated from what they had talked about, the ending that we were expecting isn't the ending that we got, and that includes the city burning. And all of that leads me to my biggest frustration while I'm seeing people talk about this, which is that all of these unanswered questions left people hoping for a third album. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with hoping that your favorite artist is going to put out more content. Obviously, that's something that's exciting, you know? You want to listen to new music all the time from your favorite creators. And especially when it's a project that's as intricate as this, you're hoping there's always going to be something else. There's always a better way to dig into the story and to find new characters and to keep it going. And they've really crafted a world that allows for that to happen, where they could go off on whatever other characters. They introduced so many side characters that live in the city, that lived with the Banditos, that we could explore. But does that mean we're getting a whole other album? I don't know. But there was this whole argument that because the box set CDs were in a set of 3, or because, you know, I don't even know whatever else, but they've been giving us stuff in 3s was the idea. So what's gonna happen is, in the same way that we have kind of Dark Clancy, Nova Bishop, Torchbearer as the 3 CDs, we're gonna get Clancy the album, Breach the album, and then Torchbearer the album to wrap things up. And the hope is that maybe that album would go more into Torchbearer trying to find the next Clancy, or maybe it would be more about Clancy's ruling and what he's doing in the city now. Maybe it's going to be a look into the lives of the other Banditos, or the city burning, like people were expecting to see. And that all goes along with the fact that we never got any of the songs that we thought we were getting. We never got any of the resolution for the names of songs or whatever it might be that was on the shirts during the tour, where there was "Do You Feel at Home?", there was "No Kin", there were all of these different messages that people were decoding that never went anywhere. It doesn't seem like they were in any letters, it doesn't seem like they were in any songs, they're not any song titles for sure, but they were on a track list that had been going around that I think was fan-made, but a lot of those song titles made sense with people because they were terms that we've seen throughout the performances, and now, okay, they're finally in an album that makes sense to us. So when that didn't happen, it was confusing because it's like, why did they put all these things? What was the point of all the shirts? Why did they do all of that if it didn't go anywhere? And they're arguing that along with maybe this album being more focused on the Torchbearer, it could be the third thing in the relapse story, where there's Clancy for the struggle, there's Breach for sort of the emotional side of things and the aftermath and all of that, and then there would be this third album that is more about acceptance and that's more about, I don't know, moving on, I guess, which again, we're talking about cycles here. We're talking about things that you never really escape. So it's okay to be hopeful that one day Clancy's gonna break the cycle, one day he's gonna get out, one day the paint is gonna get low enough to where it's not a problem anymore or whatever. That is all good and fine and seems to be what's going on in the visuals. You can see that the paint got lower, you can see that they're getting closer to achieving this goal of breaking free from the cycle. So it's okay to hope that one day things are going to be better to the point where they don't have to do this fight. But at the same time, it seems weird to be wishing for an album that talks about acceptance or that talks about the cycle as though it can be easily escaped or as though it can be resolved. I feel like this is the type of story and the message that needs to be left open like this. And it's an ending that kind of needs to be disappointing, because that's just reality. How much more can you possibly expect from a story like this? Because at the end of the day, Tyler posted and said that Breach took everything he had. He gave it everything he had. So why would you come in asking for more? I was seeing these messages within a day of the album coming out, people saying, okay, well now we gotta hope for a third album, now we have to hope that they're gonna continue the story in this way, we have to hope that they make something else, or, you know, going back to that whole thing that I was saying earlier about how they're wishing there were more tour dates, that they're gonna announce this whole other 2026 leg of the tour, they're gonna tour America, and then they're gonna tour the rest of the world. All of this stuff about how it's such a big thing that they have to keep going with it, and it's like, at the end of the day, he flat out said this is all he has. I feel like it's a little disrespectful, not only to the effort that they've put in, but also to the story itself, to ask for more. Tyler flat out said this is all he has, and after this they need to take a break. And the story, in my opinion, resolved exactly how it was supposed to. The cycle is going to continue. They weren't able to break the cycle, but things maybe got a little bit better. It does end on a hopeful note. You do your best and you do good for the people around you, and if you can't do that, you keep on pushing. And to try and ask for more music within a day of all of that coming out, it just feels so disrespectful to the art that they gave us. And it's like, yes, as a joke, it's funny to be like, oh, we're all so delusional together, and like, we're just gonna keep hoping for all of these things, and we're gonna keep on digging for all of these clues for stuff that they're gonna hint at us eventually. I think all of that is funny, up until a certain point, and then it's like, okay, but you do have to respect the actual work that the artist put in to build this thing, and you have to celebrate the fact that it's over now. Like, there are so many projects that artists have gotten themselves into that they weren't able to finish, usually for money reasons, to be honest. And you end up with half of a really well-established story that just completely falls off because they weren't able to finish it. So even the fact that we got an entire 10-year story that had a beginning, middle, and end, like, that's so much more than a lot of people are able to commit to. And to ask for more, even as a joke, just feels so disappointing, I feel like. Where, yes, if they had put something else out, or if they have something else planned, if they're going to announce something, if they're going to release something, I would be overjoyed. Honestly, I would love that. But what I'm not going to do is wish for it, because I am believing when my favorite creators are telling me that that took all they had. When they're saying they need a break, I'm respecting that and I'm backing off. I'm going to appreciate the work that they did put in, I'm going to appreciate the work as a whole, and I'm gonna back away. And if they put something else out, I'm gonna come back in equally as excited, but I'm never gonna go to them asking for more, or, you know, requesting that they elaborate because you don't like the ending or anything like that. And most people are not being so serious, and they're not, you know, going up to the artist and making it a big deal like that. But I mean, I would just feel so upset if I were to put so much effort into something and then I go online and I see so many people saying, okay, now where's the rest of it? Now you have to do a third one to wrap it all up. It's just such a weird thought to have within 24 hours of the work coming out, to me. I think it would be really cool if in the future they came back to this world, because when they're talking about different projects, they were saying that they're excited to take a break and then come back and maybe do another big thing like this. It would be really cool to get a glimpse back into the lives of these characters, or to see some of the other characters that we were introduced to, or to maybe get a side piece of content that goes into the lives of some of the people that were banditos turned bishop, or something like that. I think that would be a really cool way to expand the world without necessarily making a whole album for it. This is for sure a story that if they really wanted to, they could commit to making books, they could commit to making movies, and they could probably find a way to do it, because it's a world that has a really dedicated fan base, and it seems to be pretty well thought out. So if they really wanted to commit to the story, there are ways to do it, besides putting out a third album when they said that that was all they had. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just unjustified frustration, but it just seems disrespectful to be asking for more without even giving time to appreciate what they had just given us. And then following the album's release, the band has been pretty active, both on their main Instagram and I think both of their personal social accounts. They've been reposting fan edits, fan art, fan covers, and they've also been liking a whole lot of them. It's really nice to see a band that is supportive of the people that enjoy the work that they're doing. And then I think the day after Breach was released, they were at a birthday party for a former member of the band, just like hanging out, being 30-something-year-old guys, and it's just really fun to see that at the end of the day they are just some people. Like, they're not making it a big deal, really. They were just going to hang out with this guy. Also, around this time, people saw a billboard somewhere that seemed to have unreleased footage from something, and people were being hopeful that maybe it's part of this music video that we're looking for, but Mark, one of the guys that works with them, said that it was just unused footage from City Walls. And then, in between the album's release and the first day of tour, there were only a couple of days, but people were sitting outside the venue, getting ready. They started to see different things getting brought in to prepare for the show, one thing being the Heavy Dirty Soul car. And then around this time, people also, when they were buying tickets, would be notified that you are getting LED bracelets at the venue. And I don't know if that's every venue or if it's just some of them, because I know the Bandito camp is only at some venues, it's not at everything. But there are LED bracelets that they're giving out, and people were saying, well, maybe it's gonna be something like they divide the crowd into red and yellow and they have a fight in the lawn or something like that. I honestly don't have anything to say about what's been going on at the tour itself. I know it's been going on for probably 2 or 3 weeks by the time this video comes out. I've been trying my very hardest to avoid spoilers. I've been trying really hard to stay away from social media just because I am going to the tour. And I want to go into it with as few expectations as possible, because if I go in expecting them to do a certain thing and kind of being hopeful that they perform a song a certain way or that they wear a certain thing or whatever it is, I'm going to come in waiting for that the entire time. And then if it doesn't happen, I'm going to have only the memory of, I wish they had done it this way, rather than enjoying everything that I did get. I've done that before for other concerts where I spent the entire 2 or 3 hours waiting for one moment that just didn't occur, where the artist that I was watching didn't play the song that I wanted, and then the entire time, that's all I could think of, instead of appreciating every other moment that existed in this moment where I'm appreciating an artist that I love. It just wasn't the same because I was so caught up on that. So for this tour, I'm trying my very hardest to stay away. Obviously, I've seen some stuff, but I'm doing what I can to distance myself so that I can have the best experience. And then in the past 2 or 3 weeks that the album's been out, it has been performing incredibly well. 10 years ago, the band got a #1 album with Blurry Face, and to complete the cycle, they got another #1 here with Breach. Not only that, but it had the best debut numbers from any rock album this decade, and I believe it had the best vinyl sales since they started being tracked in 1991. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And the thing is, they achieved that with very little promotion, where I feel like, you know, in our current media space with where things are at, you have to be on social media all the time. You have to always be promoting, whether that be through TikToks or YouTube or, you know, whatever it is. You always have to be posting. You always have to be trying to go viral, getting that little moment that's gonna spike your popularity for a second. But the thing is, the band isn't active like that on social media. And their record label is also not very good at promoting them, so there was very little talk about Breach from the band or anybody involved in the actual creation of this project. Obviously, there was that whole cryptic thing with the contract, but for the actual album, very little was said, very little was posted, which means these numbers are a result of a really dedicated fan base. That's honestly what it comes down to. It's just a whole lot of people that cared about this thing. And it also goes back to what Tyler had been saying about how with normal album cycles, there's a period of usually a year or 2 in between albums where the person is not making stuff, and then they come back, they announce a new piece of work, and they do the tour and all of that. But for this, they put out Clancy, they went on a tour, and immediately, within a year, they're announcing another album. So there was no break in between these 2 projects, which means that everybody that was on board for Clancy is still around for this one. They already have a bunch of active people that are paying attention. And, I mean, that was a big thing, is pay attention, all eyes on Breach. Like, that was the whole thing that they were saying. And, I mean, yeah, all eyes on Breach. And they did so with so little, like, I don't want to say so little effort, but it's like people just cared about this. They cared about the story, they cared about the band, they cared about the music. There are a lot of people that grew up on this music. There are a lot of people that came back around to see how it all ends. And that's honestly what it comes down to, is it's just based on the fans caring about something and the band caring about the fans and caring about what they want to see. It really sucks to see how so many people in music now are so focused on just numbers and just having a viral hit or whatever. It doesn't feel personal in the same way, so to then have a band like this where It seems like their number one priority is the fans. You can really feel a difference. And it shows, you know? They did that. On September 22nd, Tyler tweeted out just to thank everybody for the number one. He says he wrote the album for us and we showed up, and that this is the most proud I've ever been to be part of this band. And it feels so special to be here and to be a part of this, because especially going back looking at the videos of them in 2012, 2015, whenever, where they're talking about how all of this is a dream and they can't believe they've done it, and then to think about the fact that they've done it for 10 more years after that and they've only continued to grow to now where they're at. It's just such a special thing to think about how many people cared about something like this. And then the last thing that there is to talk about as of right now is September 25th, the band posted to announce that the fan premiere exhibit will be coming to the final 2 shows of the Breach tour in Los Angeles. And on the surface, it makes sense. You know, this is kind of a museum that shows the past 10 years, so fans that are going to these final events can have a walk down memory lane before the show. But then you think about what we got at the fan premiere exhibits at the other concerts, and that was a letter from every show. We had the pieces of letters from every show at the last fan premiere exhibits, so the fact that they added on 2 right at the end of this, it very much feels like we might be getting 2 letters. Could it be that we're getting one final exchange between Torchbearer and Clancy? It could be nothing, you know? It could for sure just be a way for them to look back at everything, but considering what the fan premiere exhibits have given us in the past, I think it's entirely possible that they're giving us one last thing at those shows. But who knows? They could really do anything. But that's all I have for right now. I'm so excited. I see the show in a little bit over 2 weeks. Actually, I see the show in exactly 2 weeks. I'm so excited for the performance. I'm so excited to see how the show is going to end at those final 2 concerts. I'm so excited for if people discover some secret ARG that they're all hoping for, or if the band gives us another final music video. And I'm also so excited for if they do nothing. And if they finish this tour and then they get a break. I'm equally as excited for that because they deserve it. It is so well deserved. And I just want to end this video with just saying a huge thank you to anybody that's been here, anybody that's been watching and supporting these videos or asking for more, saying they're excited to see what I think. It truly means the world. I love that you guys care about this, and I love feeling the energy between us all. It's so special to care about something and to know that other people care about it as much. Of course, I want to thank the band for making all of this, for making something that so many people care about, something that's so important to everybody that listens to it. I hope they understand how much it matters to the people that listen and to the people that care, because this is the type of stuff that gets people through another day. It really is. If you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the album. Do you have any favorites? Do you have anything that you think might happen with these last couple of tour dates? Are you going to any tour dates? I don't want to end this video because I'm not ready to be done talking about the story. But if you like this and you want to see more stuff like it, you can subscribe to this channel. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to talk about, whether it's 21 Pilots or not. And with all of that being said, I will see you later. Bye.